Hello everyone, T2 here. Thought I'd make a video. You can see my tan line through here where I wear a bandana when I run. It's kind of weird looking. I was out running today, and I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking to this guy. This is like an older one. He was talking to this psychedelic artist guy, and he was talking about this painting he did that was about how we exist in the dimension of time and stuff. And I had this epiphany, and it's going to blow your mind. And it's really simple. It's a fact that most of you probably already know if you know anything about science and physics, but you've never really thought about it. And I thought about it today, and I just started tripping out. And usually people don't think about this kind of stuff unless you do drugs, but I don't do drugs, and I still come up with crazy shit. So he was talking about people that exist in time in the fourth dimension and stuff, and it got me thinking about how the price of admission for life is death. So if you want to live, you have to die. That's kind of the price you pay to be alive and experience life. But then I was like, not really just life, just existence in general. You have to be willing to deteriorate and fall apart, because anything that exists comes together and dissipates. And this reminds me of this conversation I had with this girl I went to high school with. And she was really smart in high school. She was like the valedictorian. I don't know if I've told this story before, but she's really good looking and popular and like the valedictorian and stuff. And I was talking to her on Facebook because she's a Christian, and we had this argument about, we were talking about, she said, where do you think you go when you die? And I was telling her how, you just go into the ground and your molecules deteriorate and you go back into the earth and feeds the worms, and the worms feed the other animals and whatever, and it all generates back into the circle of life. And she was like, but how do your molecules get out of the coffin, out of your casket? Because it's sealed in there. And I was like, God, you can't be serious. You're an idiot. All this time, you think somebody's a genius, and then they're an idiot. Of course, back in the old days, you'd be put into a wooden coffin that would just deteriorate because it's wood, which is really the way I'd want to go. But then, you got these newfangled coffins, and then she almost has a point, sort of, because I was looking at this TV show called Some Assembly Required, where they were showing how you actually make coffins. And it's kind of sad how people make these steel coffins today out of steel, and you got these zinc anodes. It's like a sacrificial anode that goes into the bottom of coffins that pulls in electrons and stuff to keep you from deteriorating and corroding. But it's a coffin. It goes in the ground. It's like you're throwing it away, but you don't want it to fall apart. Like, the whole point is to fall apart. But because people alive today have this taboo about death, and they think their loved ones are going to have worms crawling through their eyes because they saw some weird movie, or it's this whole, it's kind of like the way religion creates a problem and then invents a solution for it and makes money off the solution. That's what kind of the people that work in funeral homes and make coffins have done. There's a TV show called 6 Feet Under. It has the guy from Dexter, and it's like they kind of talk about that. It's kind of like when you buy a new car and they try to sell you the undercoating and the rust proofing and all this shit that you don't really need. It's really sad. I mean, steel by itself, there's like truckloads and truckloads of steel that they bring into this one factory in Illinois or Indiana or somewhere like that, and they make these coffins. And you have to pull the steel out of mountains because steel doesn't naturally occur, and the topsoil has to be pushed up through, like, tectonic plate movement. And it's not really rare, but it's hard to get. You don't want to waste what little steel we have on coffins. We could have built a Death Star out of the number of coffins we've made right now. We could probably be in orbit, flying to Pluto or something in a Death Star. That's the amount of steel we've wasted on coffins. I'm just saying. And zinc. I'm sure zinc's probably pretty rare. But anyway, eventually it's going to fall apart no matter what you put in it. Everything corrodes and falls apart and gets circled back into the circle of life and feeds the animals and all this stuff. So I've always thought about it like, in the future I'm going to die. And I'm still going to be here. My molecules are just going to dissipate. I'm going to, become food for some cow one day. But here's where I had my epiphany. I never really thought about it backwards. Like, I've always been here. Not only am I alive today, but I was here before. I was here back in World War I, World War II. I was here during the ancient Egyptian times. I was here during the dinosaurs. I was here during the Big Bang. I was just different forms. I was like a molecule. Different molecules, like in different places. And that freaking blew my mind. Because like I've always heard this thing, like if you drink a glass of water today, statistically the odds are that one molecule of it is passed through the bladder of Oliver Cromwell. I don't know if you ever heard that. Or definitely it's passed through a dinosaur. Dinosaurs pissed out one molecule at least of every glass of water you drink today because of math or something. It's kind of an untestable hypothesis, but that's what they say. I've also heard, what was the other thing? Everybody in England is a direct descendant of Charlemagne, but actually everybody on Earth, I think. Or 1 in 200 men are related to Genghis Khan. They're direct descendants of Genghis Khan because of how it works out. Because once you go back, if you trace your lineage back to your grandparents and their grandparents, eventually you have so many ancestors that it was more than the population of that time. So obviously a lot of these are interconnected, and you have the same ancestors with other people, and you have common ancestors. So anybody that has direct descendants today is actually the ancestor to everybody at some point. And if you go back to the earliest date, you could say it was like Charlemagne or somebody in his time. So that's pretty crazy too. But if you think about it, like, I've been here this whole fucking time since the Big Bang. And I was born in the 70s. So that means around 1970 or so, I was probably on my way to becoming, or I probably already was, since cows lived probably 10 years at least, I was probably like in the meat tissue, or the muscle tissue of a cow, and a chicken and a pig, and also like a tomato, and some other plants that my mom ate that eventually formed into this body that you see before you now. Actually not this body, because also every 7 years every cell in your body regenerates completely. So I'm not even the same person I was 7 years ago, except for like your brain and your spinal cord, because nerve endings and nerve tissue doesn't regenerate. And that's even trippier, because if you think about nerve endings and nerve tissue actually do regenerate, but the way they do it is they have to actually decompose all the way when you have to die, and you have to reform into a whole new body by the process of going through animals and plants and going back into somebody's mother who has sex with a man who turns all this food energy that they've eaten back into nerve endings and nerve tissue and brains and brain stems, and then you have to have this circuit of electricity that constantly goes through your head, through your mind, through your body for like, I don't know, decades, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, 100 years sometimes. It has to constantly be going through there to maintain your ego, which is your sense of self, and to be what you consider an existence or life is. That's a whole lot of shit to go through. And then if you think about how your heart is constantly beating and your lung is constantly beating, and they never had a break for like 30, 40 years, it's pretty upsetting, and so it's weird. That's kind of the epiphany I had today. So if you haven't never thought about that before, chew on that. And a lot of people have been asking me like why I don't make so many videos anymore. That's because when I think about crazy shit like that now, I just write it down, because I'm eventually going to try to write a trilogy of books that I've been working on. So I don't really want to waste my good material on YouTube videos anymore. I don't really think it's that worthwhile. I mean, I guess it is. Probably more people would see my YouTube videos than would actually buy a book that I wrote. But that's kind of, I don't know. I just don't want to waste my good material anymore, so I just write it down.